video, we're going to be covering a highly scored student answer to a multi-state essay examination question. So before we dive in, I first want to give you some brief instructions. We recommend that you go to the National Conference of Bar Examiners website. We've provided the link for you, and that you read the February 2015 civil procedure question as well as its accompanying answer. I'm not going to be reading that question or answer here in this video, and I think if you read it thoroughly first and then you watch this video, it's going to be that much more helpful. And that's because I'm going to be covering an actual student answer. In other words, we're going to be looking at an answer that an examinee wrote under real-timed constraints on the day of the real bar exam for the February 2015 civil procedure question. And we pulled this high-scoring student answer from the Minnesota Board of Law Examiners website. And again, we've linked that for you as well. That's a great resource for you to get your hands on other high-scoring student essays. People often find this information helpful so that they can get a realistic expectation of what their essays and MPTs should look like. So again, that's why we provided this resource for you. So assuming that you've already read this February 2015 Civ Pro question and answer, you can move forward with the rest of this video. So the purpose of this video is not to discuss the substantive law that's at issue or being tested in this civil procedure question. Instead, the purpose of this video is to show you how this examinee or this student structured their answer in response to the question and how that helped them receive a high score. So you'll notice that we color-coded this for you, and I want to explain what this color coding means, so to speak. So anything that is highlighted or color-coded in green is trying to illustrate to you the issue statement or the heading. Anything in yellow is this examinee's rule statement. Anything in that bluish turquoise color is illustrating the analysis. And finally, anything in gray is the student's conclusion to that issue or to that question. So if you're taking just a brief look at the student's first issue, or number one, as they have it labeled, you'll see that it goes green, yellow, blue, gray. This is perfect. We discussed in previous videos how MEEs are graded, and we explained that states have different grading rubrics as well as different passing scores. But the key takeaway, which is consistent across uniform bar exam jurisdictions, is that the easier your essay is to read, the easier it will be to grade, which is more likely than not going to yield you a higher score, which is, of course, everyone's goal. So to bring that full circle, by looking at this high-scoring student answer response to question one and seeing that we've color-coded it in that green, yellow, blue, gray order, illustrates that this student followed the issue, rule, analysis, conclusion format, or IRAC, as you more likely than not covered back in law school. So the purpose of this video is not to dive deep into how to format an answer. We're going to cover that in another video. Instead, I simply wanted to show you that this high-scoring student answer is something that I think you too can realistically achieve. And I want to tell you why. And I've offered some critique on the handout that you have available as well. So given that you've already read this question and answer, so you have all the key information in mind, you know that question one was testing service of process rules. And this student in response starts out by very clearly indicating to the grader that they're providing a rule. And I say that because they use kind of the phrase, under the federal rules of civil procedure. So even if a grader were to scan this quickly, they're seeing that phrase under the law or under the rules, which is cluing them in that the student or the examinee is providing them with a rule statement. And here, in response to the question, this examinee does. It explains in their own words how service of process can be effectuated. Then in the blue, the student goes on to analyze. And again, this student uses perfect kind of phrases or transitions that should get that grader's attention. They start by saying, in this instance, You could use the phrase in this case or here, but again, that's triggering or signaling to the grader that you're about to analyze those instant key facts. And then finally here, what I have highlighted in gray is the student's conclusion, which is just a sentence and it's straight to the point. If you wanted to use some sort of signal to the grader about your conclusion, you could say in conclusion or therefore, and that would very quickly communicate to the grader that you are concluding that issue. So here, just to kind of bring this issue completely full circle and to be thorough, what was being tested here is whether or not service of process was proper. And the fact pattern here told us that according to the state's civil procedure rules, or the state's court rules, so to speak, the way that this party effectuated service of process was not proper. However, the service of process method chosen is that they decided to serve the CEO, the defendant CEO, and that is proper under the federal rules of civil procedure. And that's really what this was testing, to see whether or not you knew that based upon the federal rules, you can effectuate service of process pursuant to the state's rules or pursuant to the federal rules. Here, it was pursuant to the federal rules, so it was proper. Moving on to the second issue, again, you can see that we've color-coded or highlighted how the student formatted their response. You see the green, which is indicating the issue that the student is responding to. You see the yellow, and then you see some blue, and then finally some gray. So what you'll notice here with this issue is that the student's answer goes yellow, blue, a few times, back and forth. Here, the student was responding to a question that was testing subject matter jurisdiction. And there are multiple kind of issues at play to fully flesh out a subject matter jurisdiction assessment, or to fully answer a subject matter jurisdiction question. So here, I think that's why the student kind of went back and forth with their rule statements and then their analysis of that applicable rule statement. And while this is technically not following a perfect IRAC or issue rule analysis conclusion format, it is still very easy to follow, and that is what is key. You want the grader to be able to quickly see that you gave them all of the information that they're looking for according to their rubric so they can give you points. And here this student did just that. Finally, turning to the third issue, again, you see some green, which is highlighting the issue, yellow highlighting the rule, and some gray highlighting the conclusion. So here, I want to actually point this out, that the student did not answer this portion of the question properly. The student did not provide the proper joinder rule that was at issue. However, this answer is categorized as a high-scoring student response. So this should hopefully illustrate to you that you do not need a perfect answer to score high on the MEE. Now, to take kind of a step back and look at the big picture here, there were 3 specific issues being tested in this civil procedure question. And this student arguably touched upon 2 of the 3 very well and articulated those applicable rules, analyzed those instant facts, and reached a conclusion. Here for this third issue, as I already mentioned, the student did not set forth the correct rule, and therefore their analysis was not going to be perfect. But yet, the student was able to pull off an answer. So I hope that gives you some encouragement that you do not need to have every single word of all of your outlines memorized to pass this test. You do not need a perfect answer to get a good, passing, or even a high score in response to an MEE question. So just to recap here, the big takeaway from this high-scoring student response. Here, I think this student has a pretty decent understanding of the law. As I mentioned, they essentially addressed 2 of the 3 issues correctly that this question was getting at. Additionally, this student, I think, had stellar format. They followed that issue rule analysis conclusion pretty much throughout the whole essay. And even when they went back and forth from their rule statements to their analysis, I still think it flowed and it made sense. In other words, it was easy to follow. And all in all, that yielded them this high score. So hopefully you can take this information as you move forward and study and do your own practice of application to remember that you don't have to strive for perfection here to do well. Instead, I'll obviously focus on knowing the law understanding it, memorizing it so that you can clearly apply it, but also, which is equally as important, you need to learn how to provide the grader with something that is easy to read, therefore easy to grade.